What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Come On Then Console. My name is Jason. Today we're talking about my top 5 Xbox 360 games ever. Now, I've created this little kind of 5-game list here based on games that I played loads of when I had a 360 back in the day. Obviously, I've still got a 360, hence why I'm collecting for the system. But that heyday, I'm talking like between maybe like 2008 to 2014, that kind of heyday period where I had a 360 and that was the console I owned, that's the system I played games on. So it was all about the Xbox 360 in that period for me. I did get a PS3 during that time as well, but I mostly played 360. So yeah, these are my 5 favourite games on the system. These could be interchangeable really. I could do a part 2 quite easily. I do have one honourable mention as well here. So let's get to the list. The honourable mention goes to Portal 2. I've never really been one for puzzle games, but when the first Portal came out, it really kind of changed my mindset of like puzzle games in a first person perspective being really interesting. Didn't play too much of the first game. Then the second game came out and I played shitloads of this one. I think having a semblance of a story helped me kind of move forward and try and solve the puzzles, because I wanted to know what was going to go on with the story and the characters, And this game is one of the most straight up funny games ever. Like, I found myself laughing a lot of the time as well. I think one of the robots is voiced by Stephen Merchant, and he's hilarious in this. He's really funny. And yeah, I found myself really laughing. It's got a lot of levity in here. And yeah, I think the puzzles are really mind-bending as well. Using portals to figure, to move things out, to get things in a certain spot. It does step your brain up in terms of you've got to think, outside the box, with the idea of these portals that you're using. It's excellent. It's absolutely excellent. Definitely one for me. I think it deserves to be on a best of 360 list for me. I'd say this is probably one of the best puzzle games of all time.
If you want to know, my favourite puzzle game of all time is Tetris. It is the greatest puzzle game ever.
This is one of the best ones for me ever, and I think it deserves to be on this list. Next up is a game from a couple of franchises that I just adore. I'm a massive horror film buff. I'm a massive sci-fi nerd, and yeah, this game, I played it to death. And yeah, I just love it. It has 3 campaigns in it. It's awesome. It still holds up today as well. I've got it on Steam as well, and I played it with some mods, and it still really holds up. And there's some great overhaul mods as well, making it look really up to date. The game I'm talking about is Aliens vs Predator. This game is fantastic. 3 campaigns where you can play as the Marines, the Predator, or the Alien. And each campaign has their distinct gameplay style, distinct mechanics. My favourite campaign in this is the Marine campaign, because it's straight up a horror game, and I love horror games. I love that kind of vibe. If you're a fan of Aliens in any capacity, this game has you covered in terms of sound design, visuals, everything you can think of about the Aliens. It has it there. It's got the motion tracker, that bleep and bloops of the motion tracker just takes me back to watching Aliens and being absolutely terrified as a kid. Yeah, I love this game. It's awesome. It's one of my favourite games on the 360. Aiming at some guy's head as a Predator with your laser cannon, your plasma cannon, and just blowing their head off is satisfying as hell. Next up, some people might think I'm cheating with this one because it's a remaster on 360, but I think it's such a big deal. When it came out, it was a massive deal for me. When it came out, it was a huge deal, and the visual overhaul it gave us was unbelievable for the time. I'm talking about Halo Anniversary Edition. I'm a massive Halo fan. When I say massive Halo fan, I mean maybe 1 to 4. I love those games. Even the 4th one, didn't hate it. Really enjoyed that one for what it was. But the creme de la creme for me will always be the first Halo. And for Microsoft to go back to the first one and give it a lovingly visual overhaul for the 360 was just a love letter to me, basically. Like, they wrote to Jason, we've made this. This was absolutely a day one buy for me, because I adore that first game on the original Xbox. Yeah, this was definitely a day one purchase for me back in the day, and yeah, the overhaul on this is absolutely amazing. But yeah, it's definitely up there in the best games on 360 for me. And I might be cheating because it is a remaster, but it was such a big deal for me when it came out. It's Halo Anniversary Edition. The next game is Dead Island Riptide. Yes, I absolutely adore this game. It's like an open world zombie RPG, and I spent absolutely a ridiculous number of hours on this game. This game's got an amazing, unique combat system where it's mostly melee focused. You can target limbs, you know, break their arms so they can't swing at you, break their legs so they can no longer run at you, they have to crawl. There's loads of ways to dispatch zombies in this game. And also, the melee combat brings upon weapon customization, so you can make weapons, like you can take a bat and some nails and make a nailed bat, for example, and you can just make some crazy creations with the weapons and constantly upgrade them to make them unwieldily powerful. I love this game. The tropical setting is awesome as well. It looks beautiful. I did play the remastered version as well, so the remastered version on PS4 just gives us a smoother frame rate and nicer visuals, but I still think this is one of the best 360 games on the system for me. I adore this one. If you love zombies and open world games, this is a quintessential zombie open world RPG. So the second game in my top 360 games of all time is Ninja Gaiden 2. I played an immensely amounts of this game. This game was some would say a step up from the first one, some would say a step down from the first one. I adore that first game. Ninja Gaiden for the original Xbox was awesome. Some would say this is, you know, Dark Souls before Dark Souls. This is the series that brought us that rock hard, brutal difficulty before the Souls games became famous for that in some regard. But this game, it amped up the first game to 11 in my opinion. The first game was methodical and calculated in its combat. You have to be quite, you know, you've got to think on your feet with the combat in that first game. This game was similar to that, but it was a bit smoother in its execution, and it allowed you to just decimate your enemies in this game. The amount of gore and violence in this game somehow, for me, added to that primal combat, that just nasty, brutal combat that you would expect from a ninja warrior like Ryu Hayabusa would be able to do. So you're like, you know, you're dismembering enemies, you're decapitating enemies, you're cutting them in half. So I'm not saying I love this game because of the violent content per se, but I feel like the combat is so brutal, so visceral, that it added to the fun nature of this title. It added to that enjoyment factor, because you're just being an absolute monster in this game as Ryu Hayabusa, and just once you get, you know, to grips with that combat, you are an unstoppable killing machine. This game was so much fun. It's rock hard as well. I'd go as far as saying it's a bit easier than the first game. The first game gets to a point where like it gets stupid hard. I feel this game is a bit more of an easier road to travel down, and actually easier to finish than the first game. The first game is like, we're going to wreck you from the word go. This game is more like, we're going to ease you in, let you slice and dice some enemies up, but we're going to kick your ass in boss fights. This has some great boss fights as well. I love the boss fights in these games, and Ninja Gaiden 2 is no exception. Adore this one. Obviously one of my favourite games on the 360. It's great. That's Ninja Gaiden 2. The best game on Xbox 360, I've spoken about this game before in my favourite RPGs video. Mass Effect 2 might be my favourite game of all time. It's definitely my favourite RPG of all time, and it's definitely my favourite Xbox 360 title of all time. It is unbelievably deep, it is dense, it's got content for fucking days and days and days. I've got like 60 hours in this game. I wanted to see every planet, I wanted to build every relationship with my characters, I wanted to see who would survive and who would die at the end. Yeah, this game has everything I would want from an RPG. It's got a great over-the-shoulder shooting combat mechanics as well. Yeah, I love this game to pieces. The character building, the world building, everything about it. It is as sci-fi opera as you're going to get. You know, it's as Star Wars as you're going to get without going that straight Star Wars route. But BioWare made this sci-fi RPG one of the greatest games of all time, if not the best game ever for me. I absolutely adore it. I love everything about this game. Hell, even the planet mining sequences that people just hate, they're not terrible. You know, they're a bit of a nuisance, I suppose, because they break away from the gameplay, but they're not terrible, right? They're there to serve a purpose for the game, and they're over within a couple of minutes, and you're done. They're not terrible. There's not a lot that I dislike of this game, if any. It's got great characterization. Every character is meaningful. Every conversation has something behind it in terms of narrative or story implications. Yeah, this game is fantastic. It's awesome. I love it. And it leads on to Mass Effect 3, which I still think is great, but I don't love it nowhere near as much as this. This game, I just wanted to keep playing it and playing it and playing it. And when I finished the campaign, I wanted to go back and play some more. And hell, talking about it now, I want to go and play it. So that is it, guys. Those are my favourite Xbox 360 games ever. Of course, these can probably, like, you know, interchange with other titles over the time. You know, I can make a part 2 quite easily. But yeah, I do love this console. It's one of my favourite consoles ever. It's the console I had for the longest time. You know, we had the Xbox 360 and the PS3 for the longest time, because at the time it was unusual to have a system for longer than 5 or 6 years. I've got so many gameplay hours on 360. I love the system. I still love the system. It's worth collecting today, in my opinion. And these just happen to be 6 of my favourite games. As always, guys, let me know any of your thoughts in the comments down below for any of these titles. And please drop down your top 5 360 games ever in the comments. And as always, let's continue to build an Xbox 360 collection.